Jeff and the Wretched Mess of Time Travel by C.D. Rabb. Audiobook read by me, Robert the Robot. Prologue. Somewhere out there. In Texas, a blizzard is about as likely as penguins running for office or tofu tacos beating out brisket. But in January 1985, the state was hit with so much snow that even the cacti seemed to want fur coats. The whole state reacted with, "Y'all ain't gonna believe this." Still, that was nothing compared to what happened in the small town of Peculiar. The sky above the town suddenly glowed bright blue, like a neon sign at a honky-tonk. A swirling vortex appeared, floating about 50 feet up. Out of it came either a time traveler or the universe's most confused delivery, our hero Jeff, who shot through the vortex screaming like a cat in a dryer. "Ah!" Jeff yelled as he spun through the air, about as graceful as a flying refrigerator. His wild ride ended when he crashed into an open dumpster. Thwump! It wasn't the softest landing, but the snow-covered trash at least broke his fall. Dumpster diving in a blizzard. Now that's a Texas welcome. Jeff, dazed and smelling awful, blinked and tried to figure out where he was. He saw a faint light coming from the dumpster's lid, offering a way out. He pushed the lid open, making a loud noise that could wake the dead. As he climbed out, a pile of trash failed to break his fall. The alley cat stared at him, clearly confused by this human acting like one of them. Jeff leaned on a wall to stand up, his legs shaky and unsteady. He shuffled toward a weak security light that barely lit the area. In his head, a Frank Zappa song played over and over, matching his bad luck. He muttered, "Don't eat the yellow snow," and almost laughed at how strange his situation was. Wearing his new scent, Eau de Dumpster Frost, Jeff walked through the snow, his breath visible in the cold air. Just as he thought he might make it, a dog chased a quick alley cat around the corner. The cat zipped between Jeff's legs, making him stumble and almost fall again. Squeak! Came a tiny noise from Jeff's pocket. He looked down in shock. "Oh no, I almost forgot you," he said, pulling out a small white mouse. The mouse glared at him with bright blue eyes, as if to say, "You had one job." "Yeah, I know. Sorry, we'll find somewhere warm soon," Jeff promised, spotting a department store glowing through the snow. Inside, mannequins wore southwestern winter clothes, looking ready for a fancy rodeo in the Arctic. Jeff stared at the strange scene. "Where am I?" he wondered aloud, still trying to process the cold and his new dumpster smell. Jeff pushed the store's door open, not very gracefully, and stepped inside, expecting alarms. Nothing happened. In Peculiar, people didn't bother locking doors. "That was easier than I thought," Jeff said, starting to look through the clothes, hoping to find something warmer than his current outfit. A few minutes later, Jeff came out of the fitting room looking like a mix between a rodeo clown and a thrift store find. He wore a big canvas coat, a tight Christmas sweater, and flannel-lined jeans that barely fit. On his head was a bright orange hat that made him stand out. Fashion forward, meet survivalist chic, he joked, looking at himself. At least he was warm. Squeak! The mouse in Jeff's pocket squeaked again, loudly. But Jeff was too busy fixing his long, colorful striped scarf, which was wrapped around his neck. Yeah, I'm a terrible sidekick," he said, drying the mouse with his sweater, which looked like a cross between a blanket and a fashion mistake. He carefully put the mouse back into his coat pocket, where it squeaked in protest. Then, determined, Jeff headed for what he thought was the store's back exit, ready to face whatever strange thing came next. Instead of finding a cold alley, Jeff walked into a coffee shop. It was warm and softly lit, filled with the smell of cinnamon and coffee. He imagined steam rising from mugs and soft jazz playing. The cozy air felt like a hug. Rumble. A low sound came from upstairs. Someone or something was moving above him. Jeff's instincts took over. He quickly turned and headed for the other exit, weaving between tables. As he closed the front door behind him, the green Neono PEN sign lit up. "Crap," he muttered. He lunged for the chain, hoping to kill the light before. Click. A door opened at the top of the stairs. Jeff panicked, locked the door behind him, and ran out into the snowy street, his scarf flying behind him. As he turned the corner, before he could enjoy his escape or his new warm clothes, Jeff suddenly collapsed. His knees buckled, and he fell to the ground. She was all he got out before everything went black. His adventure was cut short by a dramatic face-first fall into the snow. And that's how our prologue ends. Another strange chapter in Jeff's life. Now he lay face down in a snowbank, dressed in department store clothes and smelling like coffee and trash. Welcome to Texas, Jeff. Jeff and the wretched mess of time travel. Introduction. Time after time. Imagine having a cosmic remote control with a big, shiny rewind button for your life. Yes, time travel. Fancy the idea of zipping back to offer baby Hitler a more constructive hobby, like knitting, instead of world domination. Or maybe erasing that fateful day you tried out the cringe-worthy pickup line. Are you a magician? Because whenever I look at you, everyone else disappears. Spoiler. No one disappeared. Everyone just awkwardly shuffled away. Whatever your motives, fiddling with time is a can of worms more convoluted than trying to teach a toddler quantum physics. Trust me, you'd need a bib. Ask any sci-fi nerd or scholar, and they'll tell you time travel is on the table. Maybe not next to the mashed potatoes, but somewhere between possible and really fun to think about while stuck in traffic. And here's where things get tricky, more so than Schrödinger's cat ever was. Time is like a particularly obnoxious house guest. Once you mess with it, you're in a world of paradoxical headaches. So, let's entertain this head-scratcher. Can I go back in time and say, accidentally erase Grandpa from the family tree? Congratulations. You've just written yourself a cease to exist notice if you do that. Poof. No problem, right? Except, no. The grandfather paradox means you're stuck in a tight loop that could make a pretzel feel claustrophobic. Because if you kill Grandpa, you're never born. And if you're never born, who goes back in time to off Grandpa? See the issue? It's enough to make one wonder if there's a secret society of time travelers with a grudge against grandparents. Was Sunday candy rationed? Did Grandpa withhold a killer black hole cookie recipe? Mysteries abound. Next up on our tour de paradox, that is French for paradox, is the butterfly effect, or as I like to call it, the sneeze and you'll erase yourself rule. Picture this, November 19th, 1863. You're blending into the crowd, decked out in your Civil War-era finery, eagerly waiting for President Lincoln to drop the hottest mixtape of the 19th century, the Gettysburg Address. But then, achoo, your nose betrays you. And that little sneeze? Oh, it's not just a sneeze. It's the pebble that starts an avalanche. Unbeknownst to you, your H1N1 lace sneeze sets off a catastrophic chain reaction that results in, well, let's say 50,000 people mysteriously meeting their maker. And guess who one of those 50,000 is? Great-great-granddad. This leads to the Confederacy winning the war. You thought you were just there to catch a historic speech, not to destroy your country unwittingly. Time travel. Worth it? Let's take a pit stop at the bootstrap paradox, where things get even more twisted than a DNA double helix at a square dance. You hop in your time machine, return to the 16th century, and hand Shakespeare a shiny new copy of Romeo and Juliet, complete with Cliff's notes because even the bard appreciates a cheat sheet. Shakespeare goes on to publish it, and boom, instant literary success. But here's the rub. Who wrote Romeo and Juliet? You gave it to him, but you got it from him. It's like playing hot potato with genius, and no one's quite sure who cooked it up in the first place. Fear not, fellow temporal traveler. There's a potential escape hatch, courtesy of quantum physics and the multiverse theory. It suggests a new universe branches off every time you make a new decision, like a cosmic choose-your-own-adventure story. In one universe, you're Shakespeare's ghostwriter. In another, you're just a time tourist who forgot to bring their travel-sized hand sanitizer. And somewhere out there is a universe where you finally found your car keys on the first try and didn't spill your coffee all over your white shirt. Buckle up because your existence in the vast multiverse is as varied as the toppings on a cosmic ice cream sundae. In one reality, you're a green-striped couch inside the belly of a solar-powered whale, munching on gourmet parrotfish while contemplating the mysteries of the universe. And in another, well, you might be sitting right where you are reading this. Let's hope it's the one where your coffee stayed in the cup. Our time-traveling protagonist, Jeffrey, with just one F because life's too short for unnecessary letters, didn't stumble into this spaghetti bowl of paradoxes on purpose. No, the universe seems to have gifted him this ability like a prank birthday present. Thanks, universe. But as mundane as his life seemed, about as exciting as watching paint dry on a rainy day, his ability to skip through time turned him from Mr. Average to the walking definition of, wait, what just happened? Jeff, who prefers a shorter version of his name, is an individual who prefers to remain unnoticed in a crowd. However, his imposing physical presence, comparable to that of a professional bodybuilder who's had a few too many snack cakes, makes this challenging. His stature casts a significant shadow, making it nearly impossible for him to blend in inconspicuously. And yet, Jeff's adventures through time and space make him a legend. He's seen Rome burn, watched Lincoln's last theater performance, witnessed the pyramids rise from the sand, and even snagged tickets to the Star Wars premiere. His life is a greatest hits playlist of human history, except with more paradoxes and fewer coherent explanations. Could there be sentient furniture in one of these time loops? Sure. And maybe Elvis is moonlighting as an Elvis impersonator in Atlantis. Stranger things have happened. Ultimately, time travel is like riding a roller coaster designed by someone who skipped the safety first lecture. It's wild, unpredictable, and probably not something you'd want to do without a seatbelt and a strong sense of humor. So, fire up your DeLorean, punch it to 88 miles per hour, and enjoy the ride. Just be careful not to sneeze. Chapter 1. Let it snow! Let it snow! Let it snow! Sonny Bono's voice pierced through her slumber. Cynthia couldn't pinpoint why she had set her clock radio's volume to maximum and placed it on the far side of the room. Perhaps somewhere in the deep chasms of her mind, she hoped the abrasive awakening would rouse her from sleep. Yet to no avail, she found herself retreating under the covers, succumbing to the siren call of her bed after each insistent beep every 9 minutes. However, that day stood out. It felt promising and brighter, and she was determined to tackle it head-on, even though she still needed to figure out how. With a mix of resolve and reluctance, she threw back the comforter and stepped out of bed. "ZP, damn it!" she yelled in a whisper. The shag carpet had never failed to deliver a static shock during the winter months. She clutched the comforter tightly, wrapping it around her, shuffling across the chilly floor to silence Sonny and Cher. As the song waned, her finger poised to snatch a few more moments of peace with the snooze button, the DJ's bombastic voice pierced the airwaves. "It's freaking cold outside!" Forget about leaving your warm haven. The city is a winter wasteland today. But don't worry, Jack's here to keep you snug and buzzing with caffeine, spinning the hottest tracks on KWAK. Stick around because, with a decisive tap, she silenced Jack before he could dive into a pitch for the latest tech shaving gadget. Her gaze drifted longingly back to the bed, its siren calls almost luring her back to its soft embrace, tempting her to let the day drift past. But that's not how the story unfolds today. Cynthia's mind hummed with restless thoughts, a steady thrum of creativity begging to flow onto the page. Work must now be faced head-on, which often seemed as avoidable as a cold. No more sidestepping duties. Procrastination's reign concludes. The saga of Mrs. Garcia's beloved cat, stranded precariously in the tree for 72 relentless hours, demands to be documented. She is the one to bring the epic adventure to life. The story might even make the front page headline. Muffin braves the winter in Peculiar's Town Square's Christmas tree, or something more absurd. However, she knew the story wouldn't even come before the obituaries. It would most likely land between the police reports and the wanted ads. There she stood, a connoisseur of the aromatic breakfast brew, coffee, fantasizing about the day's first cup. Certainly not one of those lackluster instant pretenders that had been all the rage. In her realm, nothing quite compares to the earthy fragrance and soothing warmth of a meticulously crafted cup of medium roast coffee, the beans ground with intention, just moments before meeting hot, steamy water. Her pursuit of this morning's brew came to a screeching halt as the cupboard doors revealed a bleak and barren scene. A bounty of coffee beans should have been jostling in this unoccupied space for her selection. "Damn it!" she exclaimed, her frustration echoing. Then the sudden blare of the alarm clock demanded an unwelcome round two. "Listeners, brace yourselves! They've dubbed it the Great Freeze of '85, a record-breaking event here in Texas. 13 inches of snow atop a 2-inch layer of ice. As the broadcasted words echoed in her mind, she grumbled, Great. And who are they, the omnipotent namers of these frosty ordeals? The realization of her coffeeless condition now stung fiercely amid this unexpected icy turmoil. Although the historic chill was startling, the prospect of facing it without her cherished caffeinated ritual genuinely sent a shiver down her spine. As Cynthia contemplated the mesmerizing intricacies of snowflakes, whether they preferred the grace of two-stepping or the synchronized movements of line dancing, her tranquil surroundings abruptly transformed into darkness. The unwelcome arrival of the isocalypse left her without electricity, plunging her home into an eerie silence. Now faced with a crucial decision, Cynthia stood at a crossroads. Should she muster the courage to brave the unknown tundra outside or remain frozen in place, devoid of her beloved caffeine fix? The mere thought of a life without the invigorating rush of Java shook her out of her hesitant state. Determined to overcome the obstacles, she mentally prepared herself to embark on this wintry expedition, metaphorically hitching up a dog sled. Channeling her inner Shackleton, she embraced the spirit of adventure, searching for warmth and power, and for the prospect of discovering her favorite coffee shop, open and accepting of strays. It was an adventure that resonated with the audacious spirit of Texas. She dove headfirst into the abyss of her Texan-style closet, a place better suited for storing beach dreams than braving winter realities. It was a climate-controlled time capsule of eternal summer, where sun hats outnumbered scents, and flip-flops reigned supreme. And yet, miracle of miracles, beneath a tangle of cut-off shorts and half-deflated pool floaties, she unearthed what could only be described as ancient artifacts of the Ice Age, winter clothing. Yes, in a land where the state bird might as well be a flip-flop and frostbite was something you only feared while reaching for an ice-cold beer. She had found armor for the rare and vengeful cold front Mother Nature had unleashed, clearly as some practical joke. The temptation to stay indoors, wrapped in a blanket burrito of denial, was strong. But stronger still was the siren song of coffee and the magnetic pull of her usual writing haunt. Just down the street stood a charming little cafe, her sanctum of caffeine and creativity. Something about the way her ideas flowed there made her suspect her doctor may have been onto something when he gently suggested a sprinkle of OCD. But semantics be damned. Her creative mojo lived in that cafe, and today she would brave the icy apocalypse to retrieve it. First, she needed an outfit that didn't scream, "Surf's up, y'all," while her breath fogged in the air. So the excavation began. She dove deeper into the polyester mountain until her hand brushed something both horrifying and magnificent, an atrocious pink cable knit sweater so bright it could double as emergency signaling equipment. It was the precise shade of antacid drink, and carried an unsettling, nostalgic comfort, like being hugged by your grandma and a bottle of antacid at the same time. Next came a hand-knit scarf that looked like it had been passed down from a generation that survived actual glacial movement. Its scent, a blend of mothballs, attic dust, and pure sentiment, transported her straight back to the 3rd grade when her mom made her wear it, or else. And then, glory of glories, flannel-lined jeans still bearing their price tag, a crispy reminder that she'd once planned for a cold day, just never followed through. She shimmied into them with a grunt and a prayer, the tag crackling like applause. But the piece de resistance? Hidden at the back of her wardrobe's icy depths lay her dad's vintage duck boots, weatherproof, fashion-proof, and infused with the spirit of a man who believed socks were optional in winter. She layered on enough pairs to outfit a Boy Scout troop and stepped into them, feeling like a swamp yeti emerging from hibernation. Then she found it, the parka. Not just any parka, the parka. Navy blue, blaze orange lining for when you get stuck in an avalanche, fur-trimmed hood the size of a refrigerator. The kind of coat that whispered, "I've seen things, snowy things." It was so thick she half expected to find a preserved saber-toothed tiger napping in the pockets. It looked like it could survive the end of days and keep her warm while doing it. She hoisted it over her shoulders like a knight-donning armor and instantly transformed into a walking, talking sleeping bag. It was heavy enough to qualify as a weighted blanket with sleeves. She tipped her head back, gazing toward the heavens, or at least the ceiling fan, and muttered, "Thanks, Dad," through a muffled cloud of faux fur and emotion. Outside, a rare chorus of cracking Texan icicles chimed in solemn approval. Thus began her journey, suited up like a polar explorer, heading out into the great Texas tundra for coffee, creativity, and survival, all while smelling, faintly of mothballs and inherited courage. So, she was about to embark on an expedition worthy of a polar bear's bucket list, all togged up in her newfound yet antiquated Arctic gear. With the grit of a squirrel prepping for doomsday, she meticulously checked her inventory. She lined up her quartet of pencils with military precision. Check. 4 fine-tipped black ballpoint pens, ready to bleed ink like a vampire at a blood drive. A phalanx of legal pads primed for her profound doodles and potential literary masterpieces. Check. And of course, her trusty microcassette recorder with a decathlon of blank tapes. You see, she was armed to the teeth with tools of verbosity because, hey, who knows? A curious climatic quirk might squeeze the next great novel out of her. Picture this: a frozen Texan saga starring a bewildered young lass who is, spoiler alert, lost in a snowflake-infested version of the Lone Star State. Or she could unleash the newest Pulitzer magnet, a scathing takedown on the thrills of cubicle life. But let's not kid ourselves. The odds were higher. She'd be Parker-wrapped, parked on a chair, staring out the window, mesmerized by the novelty of this frosty Texas tundra, all the while nursing her piping hot Colombian coffee. It would have just the right amount of cream and a loving spoonful of sugar to help the cabin fever medicine go down most delightfully. Gripping her keys with the zeal of a suburban knight embarking on a formidable expedition, Cynthia advanced towards the portal of release from her domestic stronghold. However, her intended grand exit was thwarted, not by a dramatic repulsion, but rather by an obstinate stillness. The storm door refused to yield. She rebounded off it with the inelegance of a disoriented bumper car colliding against unseen barriers. A formidable snowdrift stood guard on its opposing side, thoroughly unimpressed by her dominion over the space within. Nevertheless, with her determination only mildly bruised, Cynthia girded herself for a veritable battle with the uncooperative entryway. With the zest of a seasoned combatant, she engaged in a hard-fought tussle with the stubborn door. A few escalating confrontations later, marked by determination and brute force, the door emitted a creak of surrender. Cynthia's relentless energy overpowered it, and she conceded that she was equally persistent with a sore shoulder. As Cynthia flung the door open, the sun timidly crested the horizon, akin to a hesitant performer uncertain of its dazzling debut. She paused, spellbound, on the threshold of what appeared to be a living snow globe. A winter wonderland unfolded before her as her gaze swept across the scene. It was so enchantingly pristine that she half expected to see a cartoon princess gliding past, serenading the creatures of the forest. Mother Nature was flaunting her artistry with the sunrise, showering the scene with a brilliance that outshone the most resplendent tinsel factory mishap. The freshly fallen snow lay under the sun's watchful eye, its sparkle revealing its magnificence in a confetti of glints and gleams. The wind gracefully directed a ballet of snowflakes, guiding them into ethereal drifts. Amidst it all, the trees aired their grievances under the weight of their frosty crowns, groaning with the cadence of an old rocking chair creaking on a well-worn porch. Cynthia stood amidst the breathtaking spectacle, her senses imbibing the panorama like a frost-touched libation of awe and marvel. The bold intrusion of this Arctic scene into her Texan landscape might have been out of place. Still, she couldn't help feeling like she had wandered into the heart of a winter-touched fable. Magical reindeer entirely optional. Then, quite unexpectedly, the sight of her car, Olive entombed under a thick blanket of snow and ice, took her by surprise. Caught off guard by this chilly revelation, she tucked her hands into the safety of her sleeves and began to tackle the snow with her arms. A wave of respect washed over her for those who dwelled in the frostier climates as she methodically stripped away the snowy coating, laboring for minutes that saw her shoving the fluffy mounds aside and chipping away at the icy crust encapsulating the door handle. Cynthia finally rendered her metallic steed reachable. Olive was a 1970 dark green Chevy Nova SS V8 396, two-door, lovingly named by Cynthia's dad. He meticulously rebuilt that car from the frame up over the years. Cynthia vividly recalled the day her dad rolled into the driveway, and it felt like Christmas morning as they eagerly awaited his arrival. Pride radiated from him as he introduced his first brand new car, a result of years of saving. He paid $2,500. Cynthia was only a 9-year-old kid. He always promised Olive would someday belong to Cynthia. Cynthia gave the gas pedal a few motivational pumps. With a slow, critical turn, Olive roared to life on the first try. Cynthia couldn't resist patting her dashboard. Good, Olive, good, Olive. As Olive warmed up, Cynthia decided to serenade herself with the radio. Of course, it was smack in the middle of a commercial break, and old Jack announced, "This is the biggest winter storm in 100 years. Most of Texas is completely shut down." Cynthia nodding in a satiric agreement. "Thanks, Jack, for the weather update." With a chunk, Cynthia dropped Olive's column shifter into reverse. They slowly lurched out onto icy streets. Cruising at the blistering speed of 5 miles per hour, the silence in the town made it feel like the apocalypse. No souls in sight, not a single kid attempting a snowman. Cynthia didn't blame them. Most Texas kids probably thought snow was a rare mythical creature. She cranked up the radio to drown out the eerie silence. "KWAK, the best, great ESTHIT station," announced the radio, followed by the Doors' Strange Days opening riff kicking in. After a treacherous 2-mile journey, she found her usual parking spot wide open. All spots were vacant, and she wondered if Tom's would be open. To her surprise, the blazing green neon sign shone like a beacon of hope, OPEN. Parking right in front of the door, Cynthia grabbed her bag and stepped onto the curb, slipping a bit. While steadying herself, she spotted an enormous man. Slumped over, covered in a snowy blanket, she thought, he's probably sleeping off whatever he drank the night before. Despite the freezing weather and the impending snowfall, she couldn't help but feel a twinge of sympathy for the guy. So, in a move that defied her usual logic, Cynthia knelt and gave him a nudge. A voice in her head screamed the entire time, "What the hell am I doing? This guy could probably crush me with his little finger." Stepping back, well out of potential swinging range, she proposed, "Want to join me for a cup of coffee?" He grumbled, rose his gaze, with snow cascading from his head, asked, "What the hell do you want?" in a deep, drunken slur. Unfazed, she asked, "Do you want to join me for coffee?" He rubbed his face, knocking off more icy snow, opened his eyes wide, narrowed them again to focus on Cynthia, and replied, "Hell yeah, it's forkin' cold out here." He stumbled to his feet, using the wall to steady his enormous body, then motioned for her to lead the way. Standing beside him, Cynthia felt like a child next to the abominable snowman, close to 7 feet tall and weighing over 300 pounds. He could give Andre the Giant a run for his money. Upon arriving at the coffee shop, Cynthia pulled on the door, only to find it locked. That's when she noticed there were no lights on inside. Spotting a doorbell, she rang it, and her eyes caught the sign above it. For deliveries only. Soon, Cynthia heard feet stomping downstairs, and the blinds rose on the door's window. The owner yelled through the window, "We are closed. Go home." Playing the fool, she feigned ignorance, gesturing at her ears as if she couldn't hear him. He opened the door and repeated, "I said we are closed." Looking at him desperately, she inquired, "But I need coffee, and my electricity is out, and—" He cut her off with an exasperated sigh. "Okay, damn it, come in. I'll put a pot on, but I'm not playing buzzboy. Do you want your usual Texas pecan and Colombian medium roast blend?" Walking through the door, Cynthia expressed gratitude. "Thank you, and yes, you are amazing." The giant stepped in behind Cynthia, and the owner questioned, "Is he with you?" She replied confidently, "Yeah, so make that 2, please," while pushing her hood back. She guided the giant to her usual table. As a writer who thrived on daily musings, people watching from the same seat, gazing out the familiar window and pondering, "What's their story?" was her routine. Today, however, the streets were tranquil, so the giant had to be her source of intrigue. He settled by the window as she headed to the bar. Gratefully, Cynthia conveyed her deep-rooted desire for coffee, prompting the curious owner to inquire, "Did you come all the way here just for a cup of coffee?" She chuckled in response, fully aware of how absurd it may sound. "Yes, I know. It sounds wild. But I cannot do without my coffee, especially on a day like today. And with no electricity, I need some extra warmth. So you really are a lifesaver," she explained. As two steaming mugs of coffee brimming gracefully glided across the counter, Cynthia's heart swelled with gratitude as she slid a pair of 20s back to the owner. The owner's gaze fixated on the additional tip, a glimmer of satisfaction dancing in their eyes as they suggested it might help cover the impending electricity bill. With an air of dismissiveness, he turns away, then reached for a well-worn copy of George Orwell's 1984, then sank into the embrace of a well-weathered, oversized leather Chesterfield wingback chair. Cynthia, seeking to maintain a casual tone, offered her gratitude again, directing it towards the owner by name. "Thanks, Tom." However, confusion clouded her as the owner sharply retorted, refuting the name she had used. "It's Joe, as in Joe's Diner," he said. A flash of frustration colored the owner's voice as he expressed astonishment at Cynthia's apparent inability to remember their name despite her frequent visits over the past 2 years. To fuel the fire, they informed Cynthia that her friend's presence permeated the diner with offensive odors reminiscent of refuse and garbage. As the words faded into a blur of meaningless noise, they strode away, leaving Cynthia to contemplate their perplexingly sharp reaction. Puzzling over Tom's perceived animosity, she mused, "What on earth is Tom's problem? I come here faithfully daily." Cynthia placed their coffees on the table, gracefully removing her coat and draping it over the back of her chair. She pushed a mug towards the imposing figure across from her, who grunted his thanks, and they both settled into their chairs. They sat face to face, peering into the dark brew of their mugs, taking tentative sips of the warm beverages. Cynthia was drawn to the giant's immense hands, which dwarfed the pint mug, making it appear no larger than a dainty teacup. Unexpectedly, the giant interrupted the silence, observing, "They're huge, huh?" Cynthia, momentarily thrown off balance, stammered out a startled, "What?" There was a twinkle in his eye, and he elaborated, "The coffees, they're huge." Self-consciously gripping her mug as if it were a fragile toy, Cynthia nervously conceded, "Yeah, I down like 5 of these a day." In response, the giant's eyebrow arched upward, a mix of concern and surprise in his voice. "Holy hell. Really? No wonder you're jittery. You ought to cut back, or you'll give yourself a heart attack or something." Feeling the need to defend herself, Cynthia retorted, "Me? What about you, lying unconscious on the street glazed with ice? How much—" She stopped mid-reproach, but the giant smiled, gently saying in a low voice, "Wow, you act as though you care." Cynthia swiftly said, "What was I supposed to do, let you freeze to death?" The giant challenged her with a wry retort. "Hell, why not? We've all got to go someday, right, friend?" His comment on mortality perplexed her, prompting her curiosity about his past. "What's your story, if you don't mind me asking?" The hint of a genuine smile parted his thick white beard, revealing an unexpected set of straight, pearly white teeth. With a relaxed lean back and his arm draped casually over the chair, he asked, "Ha, how much time do you have?" Cynthia glanced toward the window, noting the inclement weather before her eyes reflected on her enigmatic companion. With a playful edge, she responded, "Judging by the storm outside, we're not going anywhere for a while. Humor me. So, what's your story?" Looking down at his coffee, he lifted his head slowly and slid off his dark wayfarers, revealing eyes the color of glacial melt, sharp, cold, and impossible to look away from. With a slight furrow in his brow and the faintest curl of a smile, he said softly, "You first," as he took another sip from his mug. Cynthia nodded, exhaling like she'd been holding her breath for years. "Sure," she said, her voice a little too steady. "I was born about 10 miles from here. Grew up in a middle-class home, 3-bedroom, beige carpet. Dad worked at the hardware store. Grandparents lived with us because they couldn't afford not to. My mom died of cancer when I was 13. She used to hum while she did the dishes. Sometimes I still hear it." She paused, pressing her lips together. "My dad passed away last year. Same thing, cancer. Like the disease had a forwarding address for my family. I've got a younger sister, technically. She lives 3 states away and only calls when she needs money or forgets it's my birthday." She gave a small shrug. "I went to college just 20 minutes from here. Journalism major. Thought I'd be the next big voice. Reporting from war zones, uncovering conspiracies. But I graduated last spring. Moved back into my dad's house, of which I inherited. Now I write obituaries, puff pieces, and weather blurbs for the Piocular Daily Echo, a paper no one buys unless their cat's litter box is out of liners. Her laugh was small and hollow. "I come here every morning," she said, motioning around the cafe. "Same table, same coffee. I write, hoping for a story big enough to matter, or at least one that makes me feel like I still matter." She straightened, as if catching herself, then forced a tight smile. "Done. Now you." She folded her hands and stared at him, her eyes tired but waiting, like maybe his answer could offer some kind of rescue. The giant responded to her life summary with a blunt, "Wow, you are sad and desperate. I need to piss first, fill up my coffee, and I'll tell you a story," an expression of keen interest creeping onto his face. Both rose simultaneously from their seats, and the giant strode to the restroom while Cynthia carried their mugs to the bar. Joe, engrossed in his book until now, looked up with irritation. "What? You want more coffee? Help yourself, I'm closed." Undeterred, Cynthia resigned, stepped behind the bar, refilled their mugs, and retraced her steps to her seat by the window. As she observed the world outside, the snowfall turned into a dense whiteout. She reflected on the countless hours she'd spent gazing through that window over the years. Yet, she had never seen anything like this. She was now struck by the beauty of the snowflakes, large as pennies and sparkling in the vibrant green neon glow, an unusual sight to behold. From behind, the giant's voice drifted to her ears, accompanied by his returning footsteps. Doubt wormed its way into her thoughts. She wondered about the wisdom of her decision to engage with him. His demeanor raised questions about his stability. Anxiously, Cynthia anticipated his story, silently hoping it justified the time she'd invested in this strange encounter. Removing his surprisingly pristine black duster, the giant turned to Cynthia with an assessing gaze. He questioned, "Are you ready yet? This story will take all day, and by the looks of it, we aren't going anywhere." Cynthia responded with a request, hopeful for his consent. "Mind if I record this?" With an ease that suggested he was unfazed by the proposition, the giant replied, "No, hell, it's a free country." "Right, Joe." He settled back into his seat, clasping his coffee as an anchor. Meanwhile, Joe eyed them with annoyance, muttering, "Yeah, whatever, man." His mutterings evolved into a more definitive edict. "So, I'm guessing you guys are going to stay put until the snow lets up? I'm closing shop, so you can make it on your own. I'm off to my apartment. So yeah, help yourselves to the coffee and keep the noise down, okay?" Cynthia called out in appreciation, "Thanks, Tom," which was met by an angry correction from the shop owner. "It's Joe." Joe's voice reverberated as he locked the front door and pulled on the chain of the open sign, which would not turn off. He ascended the stairs, but not before tossing one last warning over his shoulder. "And Gigantor, no dozing off in here. This place is not your bed and breakfast. You reek." The undeterred giant cheerfully responded, "Thanks, Joe," with a wave toward the ascending figure. Turning back to Cynthia, he shed his blaze-orange woolen sock cap and the long striped scarf, laying them on the table. "Well, are you ready now?" he asked with a low grumble. Now, in the softened light, his thick, wavy white hair, pristine rather than gray, complemented his polar bear-like beard. The red reindeer-adorned Christmas sweater, stretched to its limits across his hulking muscles, only heightened his resemblance to a colossal, disheveled Santa. With professionalism, Cynthia assembled her tools: a microcassette recorder, a pen, and a yellow legal pad. She popped a blank microcassette into the recorder and pressed the record button. Wait, what's the name?" He responded with a shrug, casually lifting a finger for emphasis. "Jeffrey, with one F. You can call me Jeff." "Okay. I'm Cynthia with a C. You can call me CYN." Jeff reached into his coat pocket without breaking his relaxed demeanor, carefully placed a tiny white mouse into his sock cap, and then sprinkled some cracker crumbs beside the little creature. The mouse perched itself upright, eagerly taking a crumb in its paws to nibble. Puzzled by the unexpected appearance of the small animal, Cynthia questioned, "Who is that little guy?" "Why don't you ask him?" Jeff suggested with an unassuming shrug. Playing along, Cynthia leaned closer to the mouse and softly asked, "Who are you, little fella?" Remarkably, the mouse turned toward her and emitted a couple of sharp squeak-squeak sounds as if to answer her inquiry. Jeff couldn't help but let out a hearty laugh. Ha ha ha. No, I guess she can't, he told the mouse jokingly. Confounded, Cynthia said, I can't what? While perplexed, she wasn't distraught. Jeff seemed like a delusional drifter primed to unravel an imaginative yarn. She dismissed her confusion and urged, Never mind. Can we get started now? Sure, Jeff acquiesced softly. Cynthia cleared her throat in preparation, sipped her coffee, and directed her voice to the recorder. This is Jeffrey with one F. We will call him Jeff. So, Jeff, when does your story start? Sweeping her hand in a gesture that offered him the spotlight, continuing, You have the floor, sir.